I sent Chloe a voice message at 11 on a Tuesday night. 3 minutes of me talking about how I couldn't stop thinking about her smile, how her laugh made my chest tight, how I was scared I was falling for my best friend. Except I didn't send it to Chloe. I sent it to Chloe. The wrong Chloe. My sister is also named Chloe, and for 3 days, the Chloe who actually heard it didn't say a word. I need to back up. 3 years earlier, I went through a divorce. Not the dramatic kind, with shattered dishes and restraining orders. The kind where 2 people slowly disappear from each other. Dana and I didn't fight at the end. We just stopped talking, stopped eating at the same time. Stopped pretending the silence between us was comfortable when it had gone cold 6 months before either of us said it out loud. She got the house. I got the Subaru and a checking account that made me feel like I was 22 again, except without the optimism. I moved into a 1-bedroom near the river. 3rd floor, south-facing windows, nothing on the walls. My sister came to see it the first week and stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. "It looks like a hotel room that gave up," she said. She wasn't wrong. I had 2 pans, a box of spaghetti, and a coffee maker I'd taken from the break room at work when they upgraded to one of those pod machines. The fridge held mustard, 3 beers, and a bag of shredded cheese that was probably fine. Probably. I told her it was temporary, that I'd get furniture eventually, buy some art, maybe a plant. That was 3 years ago. I have a couch now. The walls are still bare. My name is Ethan Marsh. I'm 34. I work as a project coordinator for a mid-size construction firm, which sounds more interesting than it is. I make spreadsheets. I sit in meetings where grown men argue about drainage slopes. I eat lunch at my desk and pretend the email I'm reading is urgent, so nobody invites me to the break room where someone will inevitably ask how I'm doing. I'm fine. I'm always fine. Fine is the word you use when you don't want follow-up questions. After Dana, I didn't date. I didn't mope around either, or not in any way that looked like moping. I went to work. I ran along the river on weekends. I called my mom on Sundays. I watched too much television and fell asleep on the couch most nights because the bedroom felt too quiet. The apartment was sparse, but it was mine. No one else's preferences stamped on the paint color, or the shower curtain, or the position of the couch. For a while, that felt like freedom. Then it just felt like an empty room. My mom called it my monk phase. She meant it as a joke, but she also meant it as a concern, and the distance between those 2 things was the width of a phone call. She'd stretch to 45 minutes every Sunday trying to close. I'd tell her I was fine. She'd tell me about a woman at her church who had a daughter, very sweet, just finished nursing school. I'd tell her I appreciated it. She'd sigh the way mothers sigh when they know you're lying, but love you too much to say so. Marcus tried once. Set me up with a friend of his wife's. We met for drinks at a place downtown that was too loud and too dark. She was nice. She asked good questions. I answered all of them and felt nothing, and on the drive home, I realized I'd spent the entire evening thinking about a different conversation I'd had that morning. Over coffee. With Chloe Bennett. I didn't go on another date after that. I told Marcus it wasn't the right time. He didn't push. Marcus never pushes. It's one of the reasons we've been friends for 12 years. I started recording voice memos. about 7 months after the divorce. Not on purpose, not as therapy or journaling or any deliberate practice. It happened because I was driving home from my buddy Marcus's place one Friday, and I had a thought I couldn't shake. Something about how I'd spent the whole evening laughing at his stories, and then the second I got in my car, the quiet hit me like walking into a wall. I wanted to say it to someone, but there was no one to say it to. So, I hit record on my phone and just talked. 3 minutes of me telling my windshield that I missed being known by someone. That the loneliest part of divorce wasn't sleeping alone. It was having a thought and no one to hand it to. I listened to it once, deleted it, felt embarrassed for about 10 minutes, then felt a little lighter than I had in weeks. So I did it again the next night. And the night after that, it became a habit. Not every night, but most. Lying on the couch with the lights off, phone held loosely against my chest, talking to no one. Sometimes it was about Dana, sometimes about work. Sometimes I'd just describe my day in a voice, so flat it could have been a police report. Went to the store, bought eggs, forgot the eggs in the car, found them in the morning. They were fine. Probably. Some nights, I'd talk for 8 minutes. Some nights, 30 seconds. Once I recorded one that was just me breathing for a while, and then saying, I don't know what I'm doing, and that was the whole thing. I deleted every single one. That was the rule. Record it, say what you need to say, delete. The point wasn't to keep them. The point was the release. Like cracking a window in a room that had been closed too long. Over about 2 weeks before the Tuesday, I'd made maybe a dozen, all deleted, all safe, all gone into whatever digital nowhere swallows the things you say when you think no one is listening. I never sent them to anyone. I never even considered it. They were mine, and they were private, and they were often pathetic in a way I could only tolerate, because I knew no one else would hear them. Until the Tuesday. Here is what you need to know about that night. It was late April. The windows were open because the heat in my building runs on its own schedule and doesn't care that it's 65 degrees outside. I was on the couch. I'd had 2 beers, which is not enough to be drunk, but enough to make my guard slip about half an inch. I'd been thinking about Chloe Bennett all day. Not in any new way. Not because something had happened. Just the usual low hum that I'd gotten used to ignoring. The way you get used to a refrigerator's buzz until the power goes out and you realize the noise was there the whole time. I hit record. 3 minutes, maybe 3.5. I talked about her smile first, the one she does when she's trying not to laugh at something I've said that isn't actually funny. The way her nose scrunches. How her laugh is this short, bright thing that catches me off guard every time, even though I've heard it 1,000 times. I said I was scared. That the feeling had been growing and I didn't know what to do with it. That I'd been telling myself for months that it was just comfort, just familiarity, just the loneliness making me reach for the nearest warm thing. But it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. And I said that out loud to my empty apartment at 11 on a Tuesday, because saying it out loud is different from thinking it. Thinking it, you can take back. Saying it makes it real. I finished. I put the phone down on my chest and stared at the ceiling. And then I did something I'd never done before. I opened my contacts, scrolled to Chloe, and hit send. Some part of me wanted her to hear it. Some reckless, exhausted, beer-loosened part of me decided that 3 years of deleting was enough, and maybe the bravest thing I could do was stop being careful. Except I sent it to the wrong Chloe. My sister's name is Chloe Marsh. My best friend's name is Chloe Bennett. In my phone, they are 3 contacts apart. Chloe B, Chloe M, and the one I should have picked is the one my thumb skipped right over. I didn't notice for 4 minutes. 4 minutes is nothing. 4 minutes is half a song. 4 minutes is the time it takes to microwave leftover pasta and eat 3 bites standing over the sink. 4 minutes is also, apparently, exactly enough time for my sister to wake up, because my niece Mia had a cough, check her phone, see the notification, and hit play. I know this because when I finally looked at my phone and saw what I'd done, the message had already been opened. Read. Listen to. The little indicator sat there, glowing like a lit match in a dark room. My throat closed, not figuratively. I felt my airway tighten the way it does right before you jump into cold water, that full-body brace against something you can't undo. I typed 3 different messages and deleted all of them. The first was an apology. The second was a joke. The third was a lie, something about how I'd been recording a bit for a podcast idea and sent it to the wrong person. None of them were true, and all of them were pathetic, and I knew my sister well enough to know she'd see through everyone. So I put my phone face down on the coffee table, and I sat there in the dark. The beer buzz was gone. Everything was sharp and close and slightly too bright. Like someone had turned up the contrast on the room. I could hear the traffic on River Street. A dog barking 2 blocks away. My own breathing, which was too fast. I thought about calling her. Thought about driving to her house. Thought about moving to another state and changing my name. All of these seemed equally reasonable at midnight on a Tuesday. I went to bed. I didn't sleep. I lay on my back with my hands flat on the mattress and stared at the dark ceiling and listened to the building settle around me. Pipes ticking, someone's TV through the wall, too faint to make out words, but loud enough to remind me that people were living their lives 6 inches of drywall away, unbothered, unaware that the man next door had just accidentally confessed his feelings for his best friend to his sister. At some point I turned onto my side, then onto my stomach, then back again. I watched the clock on my nightstand cycle through every hour, and thought about what my sister's face must have looked like listening to that message. Whether she'd been standing in Mia's room, whether she'd sat down on the edge of the bed, whether she'd listened to the whole thing, or stopped after the first 30 seconds, because she'd heard enough. At 6 in the morning, I picked up my phone. No response. No text. No call. No returned voice message saying, "What the hell, Ethan?" Just the read receipt sitting in our message thread, like a grenade, with the pin already pulled. I got ready for work. Checked my phone. Drove to the office. Checked my phone. Made coffee in the break room. Checked my phone. Opened a spreadsheet and stared at cells until the numbers blurred. Checked my phone. By the time I sat down at my desk, I'd looked at it 11 times, and each time the silence had grown a little louder. My coworker Dave asked me if I was feeling okay. I told him I hadn't slept well. He said something about melatonin. I nodded and said I'd look into it, and went back to staring at a drainage slope calculation that might as well have been in another language. The thing about a deleted message is that it leaves a ghost. You can remove the file, but the fact of it remains. Someone heard what you said. You can't control what they do with it. You can't explain it away or add context or soften it after the fact. The words already landed, and you don't get to choose where. By Wednesday, I had convinced myself it was fine. That Chloe, my sister, had heard it and decided it was none of her business. That she'd moved on. That we'd never talk about it, and I'd spend the rest of my life with a low-grade current of dread whenever we were in the same room, which was a price I was willing to pay for not having to explain myself. By Thursday, the silence had shifted from maybe to fine to definitely fine. Chloe and I texted almost every day about Mia, about our parents, about whatever show she was watching, about nothing. And now there was nothing. 2 full days of empty thread. I drafted a text on Thursday afternoon. Kept it simple. Hey, how's Mia feeling? Sent it from the parking lot of the grocery store, sitting in the Subaru with the engine off. She replied 4 hours later. Better, thanks. 2 words with no follow-up, no emoji. And my sister puts emojis on everything, even condolence texts. 2 words and a period which, from Chloe Marsh, is the conversational equivalent of a locked door. I sat with that for a while, sat in the parking lot with the windows down, and the late afternoon light cutting across the dashboard, and tried to remember the last time my sister had ended a text with a period. I couldn't. Chloe Marsh communicates in exclamation points and heart emojis and strings of lowercase letters that barely qualify as words. A period from her is a door closing. I drove home, made spaghetti, ate half of it standing at the counter, and put the rest in the fridge next to the mustard and the shredded cheese, which I'd replaced since the questionable first bag, but kept buying out of habit. Like the cheese had become some kind of anchor to the person I was when I moved in. A man with a bag of cheese and no plan. Not much had changed. Friday and Saturday passed. I ran 6 miles along the river on Saturday morning and spent the whole time composing speeches in my head, all of which were brilliant, and none of which I would ever deliver. The path along the water was crowded, couples walking dogs. A woman pushing a jogging stroller, 2 guys fishing off the footbridge, who waved at me as I passed, because that's what people do in this town. They wave, even at strangers, even at a man who is clearly running too fast for someone who claims to be out for exercise. I cleaned the apartment. When I got back, I organized the cabinet under the bathroom sink, which didn't need organizing, but gave my hands something to do, while my brain kept replaying 3 minutes of audio I wished I could unhear. On Sunday morning, I woke up and lay there for a long time looking at the ceiling. The plaster had a hairline crack running from the light fixture to the corner that I'd noticed the first week and had been meaning to mention to the super ever since. 3 days. 3 days of my sister knowing something I hadn't even fully admitted to myself. 3 days of her deciding what to do with it, or deciding to do nothing, which somehow felt worse. I got up, made coffee, sat on the couch with the mug balanced on my knee. I'd spent 3 years deleting every honest thing I'd ever said. And the one time I didn't, the one time, something slipped past the guardrail. It landed in the exact wrong place. Or maybe that's not right. Maybe wrong isn't the word. I just didn't know it yet. What I knew was this. Chloe Bennett had been in my life for 14 years. She was the first person I called when Dana moved out. The last person I texted most nights. The reason I knew what Thai basil smelled like, and which farmer's market stall had the best cold brew, and why Sunday mornings felt like the only part of the week that made sense. 14 years, and I'd never once said out loud what I'd said to my phone on that Tuesday. But someone had heard it now, and the silence on the other end wasn't nothing. Silence, that deliberate, that careful, that complete. It was its own kind of answer. I just couldn't tell yet what the question was. Chloe Bennett walked into my life during a history study group that neither of us passed. Second semester, freshman year. Someone had reserved a table in the campus library basement, the kind with the fluorescent lights that hum at a frequency designed to make you question every decision you've ever made. By the third week, there were 4. By the 5th week, it was me and her, and a guy named Patrick who fell asleep with his face on a textbook every single session. She sat across from me that first night and said, I brought flashcards, and held up a stack so thick it looked like she'd transcribed the entire course by hand. She had 3 colors: red for dates, blue for names, green for concepts she described as probably important, but honestly, who knows? We both failed the midterm, passed the class by 2 points each, which she attributed to divine intervention, and I attributed to a generous curve. But by then, the study group didn't matter because we'd started meeting for pizza on Thursday nights, a place off campus with sticky tables and a jukebox that only played songs from the 90s. She always ordered mushroom and olive. I always ordered pepperoni. We never shared because I don't like olives, and she thought pepperoni was, in her words, a war crime against pizza. That was 14 years ago. I don't remember when she became the most important person in my life. That's the thing about gravity. You don't feel it until you try to walk away and realize you can't. It wasn't one conversation or one night. It was the accumulation. Thousands of small moments stacking until the pile was so high I couldn't see around it. She showed up the night I moved into the divorce apartment. No call ahead, no text saying I'm coming over. Just a knock on the door at 9:30 on a Tuesday, and when I opened it, she was standing there with the pizza box balanced on one hand and her keys in the other, and she said, "A raccoon followed me from the parking lot, and I think he wanted the pizza more than you do, but I outran him, and you're welcome." I hadn't laughed in 2 weeks. And Chloe walked in, kicked her shoes off at the door the way she always does, sat on the floor because I didn't have a couch yet, and told me a 7-minute story about a raccoon that may or may not have actually existed. By the end of it, I was laughing so hard my ribs ached. She ate 3 slices and said, "You look terrible, Marsh," which was both true and exactly what I needed to hear because it was honest. She called me Marsh, always had. Last name, no prefix, no softening. Like a coach, like someone who isn't going to baby you through whatever you're going through, but also isn't going to leave. The Sunday night started that first month after Dana. Chloe would come over with Thai food from a place near her apartment that made pad Thai with enough chili flakes to make your eyes water. We'd eat on the couch, which I'd finally bought after she told me eating dinner on the floor was not the bohemian statement I thought it was, but rather, quote, deeply concerning. Me. We'd watch something, didn't matter what. Bad action movies, cooking competitions, a documentary about cheese that was somehow 3 hours long. The content was irrelevant. What mattered was the routine. Knowing that on Sunday night at 7, Chloe Bennett would show up smelling like peanut sauce, curl up on the far end of the couch, with her knees tucked under her, and stay until she fell asleep before the credits. She always fell asleep, every single time. Somewhere around the 90-minute mark, her head would tilt sideways, and her breathing would slow, and she'd go quiet in a way that made the whole apartment feel different, warmer. Like the rooms had been holding their breath and finally exhaled. I'd throw a blanket over her, turn down the TV, sit in the quiet. My favorite part of the week. I said that to Marcus once, casually, the way you say something true before your brain catches up to what you're admitting. He looked at me for a beat longer than normal and then changed the subject. I let him. On Sunday mornings, we'd go to the farmer's market downtown. This wasn't planned. It just happened. One Sunday, she texted me that she was going and did I want cold brew. And I said I'd meet her there, and then we went the next week, and the next, until it wasn't an invitation anymore. It was just Sunday. She had a route, same every time. Cold brew from the stall near the entrance, run by a man named Gerald who roasted his own beans and talked about the process with the intensity of someone defusing a bomb. Then the vegetable guy, where she'd spend 10 minutes squeezing tomatoes. Then the bread stall, where she'd buy a sourdough loaf and tear off the heel before we'd even left. I carried the bags. She did the talking, shoulder to shoulder, not touching. Comfortable silence between her observations about this week's basil, or whether the jam woman was flirting with the pretzel guy. Then the grocery store. Every Sunday, she'd push the cart and I'd follow, and neither of us acknowledged that this was a thing couples do. She was already out. I needed groceries. Driving separately would be wasteful. I am excellent at building logical frameworks around feelings I don't want to look at. Tyler showed up in October. She mentioned him on a Sunday. Casual, the way you mentioned the weather. She'd met someone, an insurance adjuster named Tyler. He did CrossFit, which she delivered with the specific tone of someone who finds this both amusing and slightly suspicious. The pad thai tasted like nothing that night. I ate the whole container and couldn't tell you what was in it. I nodded at the right moments. Asked polite questions. How did you meet? What does he do? That sounds nice. All the correct responses in the correct order, and none of them meant anything. Because the only thing happening inside me was a sound like a door slamming in a house I didn't know I lived in. I told myself my reaction was rational concern. She was my best friend. I was protective because that's what friends do. Tyler was good enough. That was the problem. He was tall and friendly and remembered her coffee order after 2 dates, which she told me with a smile that made my hands tighten around my fork. He remembers, she said. Isn't that nice? I'd known her coffee order for 13 years. Black with 1 sugar. Except on Fridays when she switches to a latte, because Fridays feel like latte days, which is not a reason, but she says it with such conviction that it becomes one. I absolutely would not like him. I knew that with a certainty I couldn't explain and wouldn't examine. She invited me to meet him once. "Tyler wants to meet the Sunday movie guy," she said, and the way she said it. The Sunday movie guy, like I was a character in her life rather than a fixed point in it, made something shift in my chest. I said I was busy. She didn't push. She never pushed. That was the problem with Chloe Bennett. She gave you all the space you needed to keep lying to yourself. The Sundays shrank, not all at once. First, she started arriving later, 8 instead of 7, then she missed one, then another. Then 2 in a row, and the apartment on those nights was so quiet I could hear the clock in the kitchen from the couch. I went running on the Sundays. She missed. Longer than usual. Faster. Along the river past the old mill and the footbridge. I ran until my lungs burned, and when I got back to the empty apartment, I stood in the shower steam and thought about nothing, which is what I told myself I was doing. She still texted every day, small things. A photo of a dog at the park. A complaint about her coworker. The thread between us never broke. It just stretched thinner. Tyler lasted 5 months. She called me on a Wednesday in late April. I was in my car outside the hardware store because my bathroom faucet had been dripping for 3 weeks. "We broke up," she said. Her voice was flat, not sad, not angry, just done. I sat very still. I said, "Are you okay?" She said, "You know what his problem was. Great resume, terrible conversation. Like dating a LinkedIn profile." I laughed. I didn't mean to. It came out before I could stop it, and she laughed too, and for a second it felt like October had never happened. She came over that Sunday, 7 sharp, shoes off at the door, pad tie from the place. She sat on the couch and pulled her knees up and said, "I miss this." And I said, "Yeah," and she said, "Don't be smug, Marsh." And I said, "I'm not being smug." And she said, "Your face is being smug." We watched a movie I can't remember. Halfway through, she fell asleep. Her head tilted sideways. Her breathing slowed. I threw the blanket over her and turned down the TV and sat in the quiet. But it was different this time. The relief. That's the part I wouldn't say out loud. The relief was enormous and physical, and it sat in my chest like a stone I'd been carrying for 5 months that someone had finally taken away. And underneath the relief was a word my brain produced without my permission. Trouble. I sat in the dark listening to her breathe, and I thought, this is trouble. This specific feeling, this particular quiet. This is not what friendship feels like. The following Sunday, we went to the farmer's market. Gerald's cold brew, the tomato interrogation, the sourdough heel torn off before we left. Everything back in its place, everything where it belonged. We ended up at a restaurant that afternoon, not planned. She was hungry and said she knew a place, a small Italian spot, with red checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. No part of me missed the fact that this looked like a date, even though it wasn't. She ordered pasta. I ordered something I don't remember. We talked about nothing important. Her sister's new dog. A project at work. Whether the honey vendor was a real beekeeper or just a guy with nice jars. Then she handed me a fork. She'd ordered something she wanted me to try. She held the fork out across the table, and I took it, and our fingers touched. Brief. An accident of proximity and poor utensil design. She didn't pull away quickly. neither did I. Maybe half a second too long. Maybe a full second. Long enough for me to feel her fingertip against my knuckle and register the warmth of it, the specific weight of contact. That means something different from a handshake or a high five, or any of the ways people touch without thinking. She looked at me. I looked at her. We both looked away at the same time, and she said something about the pasta, and I said something back, and neither of us mentioned it again. If you've ever been in a story like this, you know the shape of it. You can probably feel what's coming. This is usually the part where someone is brave. That's not what happened. What happened is I went home and sat on my couch and stared at the wall and did absolutely nothing about it, because I am very good at doing nothing. I have a gift for inaction. My divorce should have told me that. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday, I sat in that same apartment and recorded a voice message to Chloe Bennett, and I sent it to Chloe Marsh. And the rest you already know. But you don't know what happened after. Not really. What I told you before was the outside. The performance. Was the version of Ethan Marsh that went to work and answered emails and pretended the ground hadn't shifted. Inside was different. Wednesday, I woke up at 5. Lay in bed watching shadows on the ceiling. Got up, made coffee. Drank it, standing at the counter. Drove to work early enough that the parking lot was empty. I opened my spreadsheets. A foreman named Doug called about concrete timing for the Westfield project, and I spent 20 minutes talking about curing rates and weather windows. And the entire time I was thinking about whether my sister had told anyone, whether she'd told our parents, whether she'd told Chloe. That thought landed like a fist. Chloe Marsh and Chloe Bennett weren't close. They'd met a handful of times. Family barbecues, my birthday once, a Thanksgiving where Chloe Bennett brought a blueberry pie because she'd heard my sister liked blueberry. But they had each other's numbers, and my sister, for all her good qualities, has never once been accused of keeping a secret. I texted my sister at lunch, kept it neutral. How's Mia doing? She replied 3 hours later. Better, thanks. Still coughing a little. Nothing else. No follow-up, no question back, no emoji. Just the information I'd asked for, delivered like a receipt. I read that text 14 times. Thursday morning, I told myself it was fine. The delete had worked in some cosmic sense. My sister had decided to pretend it hadn't happened, and I would do the same. And we would carry this between us, like a piece of furniture neither of us acknowledged, but both of us walked around. Thursday night was family dinner at my parents' house. This was not optional. My mother treats Thursday dinner the way some people treat church. Attendance is expected. Absences are noted and discussed in your absence, which ensures you only miss once. I drove over at 6. My mom was in the kitchen. My dad was watching the news in the recliner. Mia was on the floor drawing with markers. Normal. Everything normal. Chloe came in 10 minutes later. She kissed our mom on the cheek. She picked up Mia and said something that made the kid laugh. She poured herself a glass of water and sat down at the table across from me. And she smiled. A normal smile. A regular, "This is Thursday, nothing is happening" smile. She asked me about work. I said fine. She asked if I'd watched the game last night. I said I'd missed it. She said it was terrible and the Pacers deserved better. which is something she says roughly once a week, regardless of the score. I watched her face like a detective reviewing surveillance footage, every blink, every pause. Scanning for the tell, the crack in the surface, the moment she'd reveal that she knew that the words I'd said to my phone on a Tuesday had landed in her ears and changed the shape of everything. Nothing. She gave me nothing, and I started to relax. Halfway through dinner, I convinced myself the delete had worked, that whatever my sister had heard, she'd filed it away in the drawer where families put the things they don't discuss. The weird uncle's political opinions, the cousin's questionable boyfriend, my accidental 3-minute confession about my best friend. Then, while my mom was clearing plates, I looked up and caught my sister watching me. Not looking, watching. Her glass was halfway to her lips, and her eyes were on me. And there was something in them I couldn't read. Not judgment or amusement. Something closer to patience. Like she was standing at a door she'd already opened and waiting to see if I would walk through it. 2 seconds. Maybe 3. Then Mia knocked over her juice, and the moment shattered into napkins, and my mother saying, "It's fine. It's fine." And Chloe looked away, and I looked down at my plate, and my heart was hammering so loud. I was certain everyone could hear it. She knew. She absolutely knew, and she was waiting. I helped with the dishes, dried while my mom washed. My sister put leftovers in containers. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and dish soap, and everything was warm and domestic and impossibly normal, and I stood there with a towel in my hands, thinking that the next time I walked into this house, everything might be different. My sister touched my shoulder on the way out, light, just her hand, briefly, and then gone. She didn't say anything, didn't need to. The touch said it, I know, and I'm not done being quiet about it. I drove home in the dark, parked in my usual spot, and sat in the car with the engine off, watching the 3rd floor window where the kitchen light was on, because I always leave it on. A habit from living alone that makes the place look occupied even when it isn't. My phone buzzed, a text from Chloe Bennett, not my sister, the other one. The one the message was supposed to reach. "Sunday still good," she wrote. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking. Yeah, I wrote back, 7. I put the phone in my pocket, got out of the car, walked upstairs to the kitchen light, and the empty rooms, and the couch, where she fell asleep every Sunday. And I knew, standing there in the doorway with my keys in my hand and the smell of my parents' dinner still on my jacket, that my sister wasn't going to let this stay buried. She'd given me a week. She'd watched me across the table and said nothing, and touched my shoulder on the way out. And that touch was not a goodbye. It was a warning. 3 days passed before she said anything. 3 days of normal texts and a forwarded meme about a raccoon stealing a birthday cake. I started to think maybe she'd deleted it. Maybe she'd heard the first few seconds and assumed it was a pocket dial. That was the story I told myself. I was good at comfortable stories. Friday night, my parents' house. Pot roast. My sister was already there, sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of wine, watching me walk in with the expression she used to wear when I'd come home past curfew. Not angry, worse, patient. Dinner was fine. Dad's woodworking obsession, Mom's garden, my sister's coworker who got engaged after 11 weeks. My mom said that was romantic, and my dad said that was a felony, and everyone laughed. Normal. Completely normal. Then my parents went upstairs, and my sister said, "Come help me with something in the garage." We didn't have anything in the garage, just storage bins, and my dad's tools, and a mini fridge that hadn't worked since 2019. I followed her anyway. She pulled the door shut behind us, not all the way. Just enough that it clicked. The garage smelled like motor oil and cold concrete, and the sawdust from my dad's table saw, and my sister leaned against the workbench and looked at me like she was about to perform surgery. "So," she said. "So, you sent me a voice memo." I could feel my pulse in my ears. "I know. Do you know what was on it?" "I have a general idea, yeah." She pulled her phone from her back pocket. Didn't play anything. Just held it like evidence. "You've been in love with her since college," she said. Not a question. A diagnosis. I leaned against the wall where my dad kept the rakes. The handle of one pressed into my back, hard and cold. "It was just a voice memo," I said. "People say things on voice memos." "Ethan." "What?" "You said," and I'm quoting you, "that her smile makes you feel like someone opened a window you didn't know was painted shut." I stared at the floor. There was a crack in the concrete, shaped like a river delta. I traced it with my eyes, because looking at my sister's face was not an option. "That message was the bravest thing you've done in years," she said. Softer now, still clinical, but softer. "And you sent it to the wrong person. And I think part of you did that on purpose." "I didn't." "Okay." I was tired. I hit the wrong contact. "You hit the wrong Chloe." I laughed. It came out strangled. "Yeah, I hit the wrong Chloe." She set her phone on the workbench. "When did you know?" "Know what?" "Ethan." I rubbed the back of my neck. Moving felt like admitting something. "Sophomore year, maybe," I said. She wore this green jacket to the study group and argued with the TA about the Missouri Compromise for 20 minutes. Completely wrong about half of it. Completely brilliant about the other half. I remember thinking I would lose any argument to this person happily. "But I was with Dana by then," I said, "and Chloe was just. She was the person who made everything easier." I told myself that was friendship. That's not what friendship feels like. I know that now. She picked up a screwdriver from the workbench and turned it in her fingers. Not doing anything with it. Just holding something. We got that from our dad, who can't have a serious conversation without a pen or a wrench in his hands. "You're already losing yourself," she said. "What does that mean?" "It means I watched you check your phone twice under the table at dinner. I watched you laugh at Dad's joke the way you used to laugh when you were with Dana and trying to prove everything was fine. You're performing okay, Ethan. You've been performing okay for months." "Tell her," my sister said. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because if I tell her and she doesn't feel the same way, I lose the only person who." I stopped, swallowed. "I lose Sunday." Her face changed. Not pity, recognition. She understood that losing Sunday wasn't losing a tradition. It was losing the only room in my life where I didn't have to try. "You might lose it anyway," she said quietly. "This thing you're doing, where you sit next to her and pretend you're fine. That has an expiration date. She squeezed my arm on her way to the door. Just think about it, she said. That's all I'm asking. She went inside. I stood in the garage for another 4 minutes, staring at the broken mini-fridge and the crack in the floor, thinking about 14 years of Sundays and how none of them had ever been enough, and how all of them had been everything. If this story resonates with you so far, there are plenty more like it on the channel. Saturday, I woke up at 6:15 without an alarm. Too much in my head. Body decided sleep was optional. I organized my closet by color. Shirts, pants, the sweaters shoved into a pile on the top shelf. This took almost 2 hours, which is exactly how long it takes to reorganize your physical life when your interior one is falling apart. Then I ran the river path, 3 miles out, 3 miles back. Ran hard, the kind where your lungs burn and your legs feel like they belong to someone else. I came back angrier, not at my sister, but at myself, for hearing everything she said, knowing she was right and still not picking up the phone. For being 34, with a failed marriage behind me and a best friend in front of me, and treating honesty like a controlled substance. Her words played on a loop. In the shower. At the grocery store. While I stood in the pasta aisle for 6 minutes, choosing between penne and rigatoni, which does not require 6 minutes unless you're avoiding something else. You're already losing yourself. That has an expiration date. Her smile makes you feel like someone opened a window you didn't know was painted shut. My words, recorded at 11 at night in my kitchen with the lights off. True, everyone. Chloe had always been the exception. Every wall I'd built after Dana, every rule about distance, every defense mechanisms from 3 years of learning to be alone. She walked past all of it, not through it, past it. Like the moat wasn't there. Like the drawbridge had always been down and she'd crossed without asking permission. And I'd never once thought to stop her. She brought Thai food. She fell asleep on my couch. She remembered my cilantro allergy and my birthday, and she texted me pictures of dogs she saw on the street, and every one of these things was ordinary, and every one of them kept me breathing in ways I refused to examine, because examining them meant admitting the friendship was a door I'd been standing in front of for 14 years, pretending I didn't have the key. Saturday night, I ate leftover pasta, watched a documentary about bridges, and stared at the ceiling until 11. Sunday, she showed up at 6:45, 20 minutes early. I heard the knock, and my stomach dropped. Not fear, the feeling of standing at the edge of a cold pool, knowing you're going in. I opened the door. Chloe Bennett in my hallway, with a paper bag of Thai food, wearing a gray sweater with the sleeves pushed up. Her hair was damp, still drying. She never bothered with a blow-dryer on Sundays because she was coming to my apartment and not anywhere that required effort. I brought pad CU and something called drunken noodles, which is a name I respect, she said, pushing past me into the kitchen. I noticed the paint. A small smudge of purple on her right thumb, near the nail. She volunteered at a kids' art class on Saturday mornings, tempera, paint. She'd been doing it for 2 years, and she always came home with paint somewhere. Art class? I said, nodding at her hand. She looked at her thumb. We did finger painting. I'm 32 years old, and I did finger painting with 7-year-olds, and I was worse at it than most of them. She set the bag on the counter. I found us a movie. It's aggressively mediocre, 2.5 stars. One reviewer called it not unwatchable, which I think is the lowest bar a recommendation can clear. Sold. She pulled out containers, opened the pad CU, handed me a fork without looking, because she knew where I stood in the kitchen, and she knew which fork I preferred. The one with the slightly bent tine. Nobody knows that about me. Nobody except her. We sat on the couch. She tucked her legs underneath her the way she always does, sideways, with her feet pressed against my thigh. Not on purpose. Just proximity. Just the geometry of two people on a couch that's too small for polite distance. The movie was terrible. The lead actor delivered every line like he was reading off a teleprompter, and Chloe made commentary every 8 minutes, which was the real entertainment. "That's not how you hold a guitar," she said. "Maybe he's left-handed." He's not left-handed. He opened a door with his right hand in the previous scene. That's a right-handed door opener, pretending to be a left-handed guitar player. And, honestly, I feel lied to. I laughed, not performed. Real. She looked at me and smiled, and her smile was the window. That's all I could think. The window. Halfway through the movie, she turned to me. "You have the face." "What face?" "The screensaver face. The one where you look like you're watching the movie, but your brain is in a completely different zip code. I'm watching the movie. You're watching the area around the movie. You're watching movie adjacent space." I picked at the edge of a cushion, just thinking. About? The answer was sitting next to me in a gray sweater with purple paint on her thumb. And I was terrified she could see it on my face. "Work stuff," I said. She studied me. 3 seconds. 4. Then she nodded and pulled her feet away from my leg, just slightly. 2 inches. It felt like the distance between continents. The movie ended. Normally, she'd yawn, settle deeper, fall asleep within 15 minutes. I'd cover her with the blanket and find her note on the counter in the morning. Instead, she stood up. "I should go," she said. I looked at the clock on the wall. 9:42. Early. "You sure?" "Yeah." She gathered her phone, her keys. "Early day tomorrow." She didn't have an early day tomorrow. Monday was her late start. But saying that meant admitting I tracked her schedule. "Okay," I said. "Thanks for the food. Always." She stopped at the door, her hand on the frame hallway light, catching the purple on her thumb. "Are you seeing someone?" she asked. The question landed in the room like a glass breaking. Quick. Sharp. Impossible to ignore. "No," I said. "Why?" "You've been different the last few weeks." Distracted. "I thought maybe." She trailed off, shrugged. "Never mind. Just checking." "Work stuff," I said again, and the words tasted like chalk. "Right." She smiled, but it was the wrong kind, the polite kind, the one she uses on strangers and waiters and people she doesn't know well enough to be honest with. She'd never aimed it at me before. "Night, Ethan." "Night." She left. The building's front door closed, and the apartment went quiet in a way it hadn't been quiet in 14 years. Not the absence of noise, the absence of her. She'd ask me a direct question, and I'd answered with the same deflection. I give they barista. Chloe Bennett deserved better than that. She deserved the truth. I just couldn't figure out how to give it without burning everything down. Monday morning, I went to the deli near my office. Marcus was behind the counter. 61, divorced twice, knows my order without asking. Turkey on rye, no tomato, extra mustard. You look like a man who slept badly, he said, slicing turkey. I look like this every Monday. No, you usually look resigned. Today you look conflicted. He laid the turkey on bread. This about the friend? I hadn't told Marcus about Chloe. Not directly, but I'd mentioned her the way you mention someone who takes up more space than you want to admit. Casually, frequently. What friend? The one you talk about differently than you talk about anyone. He added the mustard. Your voice changes when you say her name, gets softer, like you're being careful with it. I don't do that. You do. Every time. He wrapped the sandwich. My first wife. I talked about her like a colleague. My second wife, like a problem. This person, you talk about her the way I talk about the deli. Like she's the thing that makes sense when nothing else does. That's a lot of insight for 7:45 on a Monday. I've been divorced twice. I have nothing but insight. He handed me the sandwich. You going to tell her? It's complicated. It's not complicated. It's exactly that simple. It's just not easy. He wiped the counter. Simple and easy aren't the same thing. The answer is obvious. The doing is hard. I ate at my desk reading emails I didn't process because Marcus, the deli guy, had described my entire situation in 2 sentences while slicing meat. It's exactly that simple. It's just not easy. Tuesday morning, I noticed the hoodie. I was on the phone with Chloe about a restaurant she wanted to try, and she mentioned, casually, that she still had my hoodie. The gray one I'd left on her couch 2 weeks ago. I keep meaning to bring it back, she said. No rush. I folded it. It's been sitting on my couch for like a week. I keep forgetting. She hadn't forgotten. Chloe Bennett remembers my cilantro allergy, and my birthday, and the name of my first dog. If the hoodie had been on her couch for a week, it was there because she wanted it there. I didn't say that. Whenever, I said. After we hung up, I opened our text thread. Her last message was a thumbs-up emoji from the previous night. I'd sent her a link to the restaurant's menu, and she'd replied with a thumbs up. I stared at the thumbs up for longer than a person should stare at a thumbs up. A yellow thumb on a blue bubble. Nothing. Everything. Chloe keeping my hoodie folded on her couch and replying with a single emoji that meant I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. Marcus was right and my sister was right. Everyone could see it. And the truth was, I think Chloe could see it too. The feet against my leg, the fork she handed without looking, the hoodie she folded but didn't return. All the same sentence in a language we'd invented over 14 years, and neither of us had the courage to translate it out loud. My sister's words again, under fluorescent lights at 3 in the afternoon, that has an expiration date. Every Sunday that ended with Chloe leaving instead of falling asleep. Every work stuff instead of the truth. Every thumbs up I stared at too long. Each one a tick on a clock I couldn't see, but could hear. Tuesday evening I sat in my car in the parking garage, engine off, hands on the wheel, concrete quiet. I opened Chloe's contact. Her picture, a photo, from a friend's barbecue where she was laughing at something I'd said. I don't remember what I said. I remember her whole face changed when she laughed. And I remember thinking, with the kind of clarity that only comes when you're not trying, that I wanted to be the reason for that face for the rest of my life. I put the phone down, picked it up, put it down. Then I started the car, turned left instead of right, which is away from my apartment and toward hers. 6:20 on a Tuesday, traffic thick and slow, and I didn't care because I was finally moving in the direction I'd been avoiding for 14 years. My hands were shaking on the wheel, and my sister's voice was saying, "Tell her." And Marcus was saying, "It's exactly that simple." And my own voice, the one from the memo, the one I'd sent to the wrong Chloe, was saying, "Her smile makes you feel like someone opened a window you didn't know was painted shut." The light turned green. I drove. I drove to her apartment on Tuesday. 1 full week since the voice memo. 7 days of my sister texting me nothing but a clock emoji every morning. 7 days of Marcus asking, "So?" every time I walked into the deli. 7 days of rehearsing what I'd say, and then forgetting all of it the second I imagined her face. Her building is on Callaway, the one with the green awning that's been faded since before I met her. 3rd floor, corner unit. I know the window because she keeps a lamp on a timer and it clicks on at 6:15 every evening. This warm yellow square that you can see from the parking lot if you're the kind of person who notices which window belongs to your best friend. I am that kind of person. I have been that kind of person for 14 years. I parked across the street and sat there. 3 minutes. I counted, because the dashboard clock was right in front of me and I had nothing else to do with my hands except grip the steering wheel like it owed me money. 3 minutes of watching that yellow square and thinking about every single reason. This was a terrible idea. I run project timelines. I tell grown adults to meet their deadlines. I once made a VP cry because his deliverables were 6 weeks late, and I pointed it out in front of his entire team. And here I was, sitting in a parked car with shaking hands, afraid to walk across a street. The light in her window flickered. She was moving around in there, living her Tuesday evening, maybe reading, maybe making that chamomile tea she drinks when she's tired but doesn't want to admit it. Maybe sitting on her couch with my hoodie still folded on the arm where it's been for a week, because neither of us ever mentions it. I got out of the car before I could talk myself into driving home. The stairs to her floor have that specific apartment building smell, carpet cleaner and someone's dinner and the faint ghost of cigarette smoke from the guy in 212 who claims he quit. I've climbed these stairs hundreds of times. After bad days, after good days, after my divorce, when I showed up at 11 at night with a bag of Thai food and she opened the door like she'd been expecting me, which she probably had. I knocked. She opened the door in sweatpants and a faded blue t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail that was already coming undone on one side. There was a book face down on the couch behind her, spine cracked in a way that would make a librarian wince. Gerald, her orange tabby, was asleep in the armchair with one paw hanging off the edge. He opened one eye when the door opened, decided I wasn't interesting, and closed it again. My hoodie was right there, folded on the arm of her couch, gray. The zipper pull is slightly bent, because I caught it in a car door 2 years ago. Marsh. She leaned against the doorframe. It's Tuesday. I know. We don't do Tuesdays. I know. She looked at me for a second. Then she stepped back and held the door open wider. You want coffee? I just made some. It's 8:30 at night. Decaf, I'm not a monster. I walked in and stood in her living room like I'd never been there before. Like I didn't know that the couch cushion on the left sinks lower than the right one. Like I didn't know she keeps her remote controls in a ceramic bowl on the coffee table. Because she read somewhere that clutter causes anxiety. Like I didn't know every single thing about this apartment because I've spent 14 years memorizing it. Without meaning to. She handed me a mug, the blue one, with the chip on the handle. She always gives me that one. Sit down, she said. You're standing like you're about to give a presentation. I sat. Gerald shifted in the armchair, annoyed that the couch cushion made noise. Chloe. Ethan. She sat on the other end of the couch, with her legs tucked under her, holding her own mug with both hands. Patient. She was being patient with me. She's always been patient with me. I need to tell you something, and I need you to not make fun of me for at least 30 seconds. That's a big ask. I know. She took a sip of her coffee, set it down on the table, folded her hands in her lap. Okay, 30 seconds, go. I record voice memos to myself. I have for years, since the divorce, mostly. I just talk into my phone when I can't sleep, or when I'm driving, or when something is stuck in my head, and I need to hear it out loud to figure out if it's real. That tracks, she said. You've always been a talker. I delete them, all of them. I say whatever I need to say, and then I erase it. It's like a confessional, except nobody's listening. She was watching me, not the way she watches me when I'm telling a work story, half listening, waiting for the punchline. She was watching me the way she watches movies she cares about, focused. Still, last Tuesday, I recorded one about you. The room got very small. Gerald's breathing was the loudest thing in it. I meant to delete it. I meant to say what I needed to say and erase it, and go to sleep and never think about it again. But I was tired, and my phone screen was blurry, and I hit send instead of delete. Send to who? My sister. Chloe pressed her lips together, not smiling. Not quite. Your sister, Chloe. My sister, Chloe. What did the memo say? I could feel my pulse in my throat, in my wrists. Behind my eyes, my body was doing things I didn't authorize. It said that I love you, that I think I've loved you for a long time, that your smile makes me feel like someone opened a window I didn't know was painted shut. She didn't move, didn't blink. The candle on her bookshelf, that vanilla one she buys at the farmer's market, the flame leaned sideways for a second, like someone had breathed on it. Play it, she said. What? The memo, play it for me. I deleted that one. Obviously. My sister heard it, and I panicked, and I deleted it. And then I stared at my ceiling for 3 hours. So there's nothing to play. I recorded a new one. In my car, on the way here. I pulled out my phone. My hands were doing that thing again, shaking. It's not exactly the same. It's less rambling. Fewer tangents about your coffee order. My coffee order was in the original. You drink it black with 1 sugar, except on Fridays when you get a latte, because Fridays feel like latte days. Something shifted in her face. Something I'd never seen before, or maybe something I'd seen 100 times and refused to recognize. "Play it," she said again. I opened my phone, found the recording, hit play. My voice came out of the speaker, tinny and too loud in her living room. I watched her face while it played. I couldn't look anywhere else. "Chloe, this is the version I meant to send. Not to my sister. To you. Except I was never going to send it, so I guess there's no version I meant to send. I love you. I think I've loved you for a long time. I think you know that. I think you've known, and you've been kind enough not to say anything, because you know I'd find a way to ruin it. I'm not good at this. I'm good at spreadsheets and project timelines and making sure other people do their jobs. I'm not good at saying the thing that matters. But I'm saying it now, and I'm going to drive to your apartment and say it again in person, and if you want me to leave after that, I'll leave. But I'm done deleting these." The recording ended. My phone screen went dark. Gerald yawned in the armchair. The clock on her wall ticked 3 times. 4, 5. "The night of your divorce," Chloe said. I waited. "You called me at 11. You said you signed the papers, and you felt like you should feel something, but you didn't. And was that normal?" And I said yes. "And you said, okay, good. And then you asked if I wanted Thai food. You said yes. I always say yes." She put her mug down. "That night, after you fell asleep on your couch, I drove home. And then I turned around and drove back to your building." "What?" 2 in the morning. "I sat in the parking lot for an hour. My radio was on the jazz station, but the signal was bad, mostly static. I sat there, listening to static and looking up at your window. I tried to picture this. Chloe in her car at 2 in the morning in my parking lot. The same parking lot where I walk to my car every day. You'd fallen asleep against the window. I could see you from the lot. Your head against the glass. The kitchen light was on behind you. I always leave the kitchen light on. I know." She pulled at a thread on the knee of her sweatpants. "I sat there, and I looked at you, and I knew. I just knew. The way you know a song is going to be your favorite the first time you hear the opening notes. Before the lyrics, before you even understand what it's about. You just know. Why didn't you come up? Because you'd just signed divorce papers 6 hours earlier. Because your hands were still shaking when you handed me the pad thai. Because you were raw, and I was your best friend, and I didn't want to be the person who made your worst day about me. It wasn't my worst day. It should have been. That's what scared me. You were sitting on a bare floor, eating Thai food out of a container, and you looked more relaxed than you had in 3 years. And I was looking at you, thinking about how I wanted to reach over and push your hair off your forehead. And I couldn't do that, because we don't do that. We do Thursday pizza and Sunday movies, and I fall asleep on your couch, and you throw a blanket over me, and we pretend that's normal. It is normal. Ethan, it's not normal. None of it has been normal for years. Gerald chose this moment to stand up in the armchair, stretch with his entire body, and relocate to the windowsill. Neither of us looked at him. We were looking at each other the way I imagine two people look at each other when they realize they've been having the same conversation in their heads for over a decade. "I wrote you a text that night," she said. "Sitting in your parking lot. I typed the whole thing out. 4 paragraphs. I deleted the first one and rewrote it, deleted the second and rewrote that. Got it down to 2 sentences. Then I deleted the whole thing and drove home. What did it say? I don't remember the exact words. I remember the feeling. It felt like holding my hand over a candle. The longer I held it there, the more it hurt, but pulling away felt worse. That's how I feel about the voice memos. I know," she almost smiled. "We delete the same things." I looked at my hoodie on the arm of her couch. "You've had that for a week." "Longer. How much longer?" "You left it here after movie night 3 weeks ago." I washed it. I was going to give it back. I folded it and put it by the door, and then I moved it to the couch, and then I just stopped moving it. "Why?" She looked at the hoodie, then at me. It smelled like you, and I wasn't ready to give that back. Something broke open in my chest, not painfully. Like a window finally, sliding free after years of being painted shut. "Tyler," I said, because I needed to understand. Tyler was proof. Proof of what? That I could want someone else. She laughed, but it was small and tired and honest. Every time he held my hand, it felt like wearing someone else's glove. The fit was wrong. The temperature was wrong. He would lace his fingers through mine, and I would think about your hands, and how you crack your knuckles when you're thinking, and how you always hand me the blue mug, and how you always hand me the blue mug. The one with the chip. The one with the chip. Because you chipped it when you were helping me move in, and you felt guilty about it for weeks, and now you always give it to me like. It's an apology you're still making. I didn't know you noticed that. I notice everything, Ethan. I have noticed everything for 14 years. I know you're allergic to cilantro. I know you leave your kitchen light on because you don't like coming home to a dark apartment. I know you alphabetize your spice rack even though you only cook pasta. I know that when you're lying about being fine, you put your hands in your pockets so no one can see them shake. I looked down. My hands were in my pockets. I pulled them out, put them on my knees, let them shake. "See?" she said, and her voice cracked for the first time. "That's all I ever wanted, for you to stop hiding from me." I leaned forward, and she leaned forward, and our foreheads touched. Her skin was warm. She smelled like chamomile and that vanilla candle, and something underneath that was just her, just Chloe. Just 14 years of Thursday pizza and Sunday movies, and the sound of her voice saying Marsh like it was the only name she'd ever need to know. "I love you," I said, and it was so much easier the second time. The words just fell out, like they'd been packed and ready and waiting by the door for years. "I know," she said. "I've known since your parking lot. That's a long time to know something and not say it," says the man who records confessions and deletes them. I laughed. She laughed. Our foreheads were still touching, and we were both laughing, and it was the most ridiculous, perfect moment of my entire life. Then she kissed me. Or I kissed her. I don't know who moved first. It doesn't matter. It was like every other thing we'd ever done together. Thursday pizza. Sunday movies. This. Same category. something we were always going to do. We just took the long way around. When we pulled apart, she kept her hand on the side of my face, her thumb against my cheekbone, studying me like she was checking to make sure I was real. "Your sister is going to be unbearable about this," she said. "She's already unbearable. She's been sending me clock emojis for a week. She called me on Wednesday." I blinked. "She called you?" She said, and I'm quoting directly, "If my brother doesn't tell you by Friday, I'm doing it for him. He's a coward, but he loves you, and I'm tired of watching him delete things." She said that. She said that. And then she said, "I have a hair appointment at 3, so this needs to be resolved before then." I dropped my head into my hands and laughed until my ribs hurt. Gerald jumped down from the windowsill, walked across the room, and climbed into my lap. He'd never done that before. He settled in and started purring, and Chloe reached over and scratched behind his ears, and her arm was against mine. And it was warm and simple and completely ordinary. "Stay," she said, not a question. "Okay." "There's leftover Thai food in the fridge." "Of course there is." She stood up and walked toward the kitchen, and I sat there on her couch with her cat in my lap and my hoodie on the armrest and the candle burning low on the bookshelf. The clock ticked. The lamp hummed. Somewhere outside, a car horn honked twice, and then everything was quiet again. I thought about my apartment, the bare walls, the kitchen light left on for nobody, the couch with one dent in it, on the left side, where she always sits. My sister was right. It does look like a hotel room that gave up. But it has that dent, and that dent is 14 years of someone choosing to sit in the same spot next to me every single time. Chloe came back with 2 containers and 2 forks and sat down right next to me, close enough that our shoulders touched. She didn't sit on the other end. She sat in the middle. Gerald protested the jostling, readjusted himself across both our laps, and went back to sleep. "Ethan." "Yeah." "The window thing, from your memo, the one about my smile." "What about it?" "It was painted shut on my side, too." I looked at her. She was eating pad thai and not looking at me, and her ponytail was coming undone. And there was a piece of hair stuck to her cheek. And she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in movies. Not in the way people are beautiful in movies, in the way a Tuesday evening is beautiful when you stop pretending it's just another day. No. She reached over and took my hand. Our fingers laced together. The fit was right. The temperature was right. "I should call my sister," I said. "She already knows." "How?" I texted her from the kitchen. "What did you say?" I said, "Tell your brother to stop leaving his hoodie at my apartment." "That's not very clear." She responded with 14 exclamation points and a champagne emoji. I think she understood. I laughed. Chloe laughed. Gerald purred. The candle on the bookshelf finally went out, a thin line of smoke curling toward the ceiling, and neither of us got up to relight it. We didn't need it. If you liked this story, there are more like it on this channel. They won't all end like this one, but the good ones usually start the same way. With something small, something accidental, something you were never supposed to say out loud. And the only thing that changed was a voice message I never meant to send.